Welcome to the Fulfilled After 50 podcast. We are your hosts, Alice
and Carol. Join us each week for your fun dose of inspiration and healthy tips you can use every day so you can live the healthy and fulfilled life you desire and deserve.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fulfilled After 50. I am your co-host, Alice.
And I am Carol, and we are super excited to have someone awesome on our show. She's actually one of our favorite colleagues.
Yes.
And a dear friend, and someone we don't get to see often enough. So we're going to have to just deal with just getting to see her at least for this podcast. So we want to welcome today Denise Hughes.
Yay. So happy to have you on, Denise, to teach all of our women over 50 and over how to manage their money, really, and their finances. And if they haven't planned for retirement, how for them to know it's not too late.
Yeah, and what to do. So, because Denise runs we're going to let her tell you her story, but she has a group called Women Talking Finances. And as you know, in this season of our life, finances is a big part of it. So we focus on that. And we're going to let Denise tell a little bit of her story, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Well, first of all, just thank you both so much for the invite and virtual hugs here to your community and to the two of you. And I am so glad to be here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Stories are great because we all have a lot of stories around money, right? Like each of us, good ones, bad ones, ugly ones. So I'm going to start with my money story. And I'll keep it, fairly short. But let's see, it was like back in the early 90s. And my husband and I were about 8 years into our marriage. Mm-hmm. And we got along great in every aspect of our lives except around money. And pretty much for 8 years, we had the same argument, just on different days of the week. And, sometimes there's just humor in things. I was finishing my master's in counseling psychology, and he was finishing his MBA in finance. And we just couldn't come together on this money piece. And the sobering part, right, was that we almost got divorced over this one issue because we couldn't talk about it. And we had gotten some help, and maybe it was like 2 or 3 sessions in, and I just had it was just a profound experience. I was like, oh my goodness, you know what? This isn't hard. This isn't such a big deal if we can just know why. Mm-hmm. I think knowing the why is really important. That we come to this relationship with money and why it's so hard for us. And in that journey and in the unfolding of that, we in our heads knew that we came from very different family systems. We both grew up in rural dairy farm areas. I grew up on a dairy farm, and he was, he lived in Wisconsin near farms. And so you think sometimes the Midwestern or, those farm values kind of absorb them in. But we had very different ways of dealing with money from our upbringing. My family saved money, and they lived on a cash basis. My dad thought credit cards were the ruination of the country. Right?
Yeah.
And my family did without. They would, you had to make priorities, make decisions on what was most important. And he came from a family that really didn't value saving. They valued spending. And so we were kind of a little bit like oil and water. rather than peanut butter and jelly, you know, when it comes to money. And but once we kind of got like, oh, you know what? This was your modeling, this was my modeling, and we came together, and this is why we have volcanic eruptions and sparks, and this is why we're not getting it together, is because we're each repeating patterns that we learned, that we haven't consciously chosen for ourselves, and that we haven't consciously chosen for our own relationship. And once we kind of got that, right, like a mental model to kind of hold, we also learned some practical skills like managing cash flow and how to have conversations around money. And you know, sometimes I'm an overanalyzer and like to process things to death. And my husband is like, he's like the egg timer. We're having a meeting for 15 minutes, and if what doesn't get said has to wait until the next meeting where we have an egg timer for 15 minutes, right? Yeah. We're just very, very different. And so we came, we came to saving money and learning about money in our late 30s. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, that's not like super late, but if you learn about it in your 20s, you're better off.
Right.
You'll
probably suffer less, have less pain in your life.
Yes.
Right.
You know, but, you know, we did a lot of crazy things. At the time, we both worked at Stanford University. We had really plush retirement accounts. And we just like cashed all that out and went traveling and grew more debt. And so we were just in a messy place. So it really took us a period of time to recover and get on solid ground with our money. And in that process, through, you know, after our counseling, I started my own counseling practice in stress management. And then our counselor had said to me, you know, why don't you do coaching in the arena of money? She said, you've been through it. I think you'd be really great at it. And so, you know, I kind of took that in, and I thought, you know, this could really be fun. And so since I've been doing this now for about 20 years, and I've done it with the heart of that if I could just help one other couple, that it's worth it. Because all of those divorce statistics that are out there of, you know, money causes all these divorces, and, you know, all this angst in relationships and marriage. And, you know, I think one of my main messages today to your community is it doesn't have to be that way. And it actually isn't money to blame, or it's not money that causes this disruption. It's our inability or our lack of education on how to have a conversation with our partner around this topic that can have, you know, honestly, some tension around it and some heat. And a lot of it is our inability to manage money, because we usually don't learn this in a family system. We don't learn it in our advanced education, college, right? And so we come to marriage and we're put together, and we just kind of fly by the seat of our pants sometimes when it comes to how does money work in a relationship. And oftentimes we repeat patterns that we have witnessed or observed or experienced. And so, you know, sometimes those are great, and amen to that, and sometimes they're not.
Right.
And, you know, and so now in our life, you know, we've gone through a lot of life of illnesses and job transitions. And one of the things that I feel is the biggest blessing, and that I am like so thankful for, is that we have learned the skills to talk about money and to find solutions and to make things work regardless of what is happening in life. And I think that's really an important thing to embrace and to know, is that while money is great and it's out there and it can offer us an outward sense of security, right? And safety, our true security and safety rest within ourselves. And it really rests within our ability to work in this world with all the different forms and energies of abundance, love and money and career and soul work and kids and family and all of that. So that's kind of my money story, in a nutshell. And I will say, while I'm better, right, at working on the canvas of money in my own life and having clients that I coach, I'm not perfect. I still, I'm always working on my stuff.
Sure.
Well, I love that you say, for one, that, if we continuously chase after the money, and if we're looking for money to fulfill our lives, and then you get to that, you will never be fulfilled, because you'll keep chasing the next thing, because that's not what creates the fulfillment inside of us. It's like we already have that fulfillment in us. And I think that's where we, dive deeper into us learning what creates that happiness and what creates that fulfillment. And ultimately, it's not about the money, but money does provide two things for us. It does, it helps alleviate that tension between couples, for sure. Mm-hmm. But if we do not create the abundance in our lives either, then it's hard for us to go out and help others and fulfill the purpose that we are designed to be here on this earth.
Yes. So Alice, that's a mouthful that you just said, right? I mean, that's like a huge mouthful of gems coming out. And yes, you're right. So whether it's women entrepreneurs or women working at a job and asking for what they need, we cannot fulfill our divine purpose unless we are ready to receive fully all the forms of abundance that we are blessed with in our lives.
Right. Because I think a lot of times we do have money blocks that come up for us, especially, when we haven't really grown up with it and stuff. I know that for me, growing up, my family was really big penny pinchers. I got all my prom dresses from the thrift stores or garage sales. Never, ever had I ever experienced getting a drink out of a drink machine. Whenever, my big night out was kids eat free at Burger King, so.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And to that end, I also just want to say that, even though many of us, many women, I turned 61 this year, and I think most of us from our generation grew up with parents from the Depression era, and their ways of being have influenced us, either in sameness or total differences, right? But it's really not sometimes how much money you spend on a thing. It's how much joy the thing brings you, whether you're at Burger King having your fun with your friends, or whether you're at a really lovely restaurant. And it's the experience that we are ready to receive and to take from that.
Yes.
That really creates the joy in our heart.
Yes.
And our soul. It's not the amount of money that we spend that creates the experience.
Right. So when you were coaching your clients, because you've been coaching for 20 years, right?
Long time.
Yeah. So is it mainly, do you find it's mainly money blocks, you're really having to clear out, or are you actually having to create systems for them to get their finances in order?
And how to start that conversation, because I think so many people they ignore the conversation. it's easy when things are great and you have a plethora of money, and then when it gets harder, it's like instead of having an open conversation, you end up having this, friction and arguing.
Well, right. And Alice, I'm going to get back to your question, but Carol, I think that you bring up a good point of, like around timing or what have you, like when is it good to do money in your life? And the thing is, with women, sometimes if we are partnered, we give that job to our partners, and we kind of say, let me know how it's going, right? But I think in a woman's life, especially at 50 and older, that we go through transitions, hormonal transitions, energetic transitions. We're looking at the amount of time we have left, right? And so coming to this relationship with money, I think that the earlier a woman can come to it in her relationship younger, the better it is. The longer that she has to be with the relationship to hone it and befriend it and fine tune it. And Alice, I have a little bit of a menopausal memory, so you're going to have to repeat your question.
I was like so anxious to get.
So the question really was, with your 20 years of coaching,
Oh, yes.
yeah, do you have to clear the money block mindset?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
they are worthy, and they,
Yes.
they are worthy to have money come into their life, or is it a system that you need to really put in place for them?
Yeah, so it truly usually is both. I will say that for women tend to have more fear around money than men do in general. And a lot of times women don't want to look at it.
Right.
They're afraid that if they look at it, they can't have what they want. And women also have a lot of blocks around things like, I'm stupid, I'm not good at math, this is just way too hard. Can't somebody please do this for me? Why do I have to look at this stuff? I think women suffer from a lot of fear and a lack of confidence and in their ability. And so part of the work is that, first of all, when we're in a place of fear, we have to speak into that first, because nobody can listen to, the introduction of a money system if they're in a place of fear. It's just like, a Teflon coating thing kind of happens, right? It's like, huh? So the first part of our work is my work is just really going into what is the story that each of us holds around money in our lives. And, some of those stories are great, some aren't, some conflict with one another. A lot of times women don't feel deserving of, or they feel guilty if they have more than others. And so, a lot of times it kind of boils down to, I'm not enough, or I don't deserve women.
Yeah.
Right. And, and I think that in looking at the stories that we hold gives us the ability to then look at the patterns of behavior that we do in our current everyday life that keep that as story alive, that keep, it keeps us promoting the legacy that we've been given. Right. Now, sometimes that can be great and sometimes not so much. Right. And so, befriending our story with truth is, I think, really important, like owning it. And by owning it, we can kind of sometimes laugh at it. We can kind of hug it and say, oh, sweetheart, you know what? You served me so well at one time in my life. And we're done. We're going to put this story on the back burner, and we're going to kind of create a new one of our own. And I think the journey and the adventure is going to be a lot more fun for you. So come along on the ride, right?
Right.
You know, and so there is this, I think there's this psychological piece that we need to explore. And as we go into this relationship with money, I think it's really important that we put blame and judgment and shame, we just like release that out the door, and instead that we bring in the qualities of curiosity and understanding and compassion and kindness to ourselves when we begin to explore what our stories are.
Right.
Right?
I love
Right.
that.
I do too.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
So
and
if like a 50-year-old woman comes to you and says, it's just too late for me. I'm just too far in. There's no way I'll ever get out of this mess. Is there one tip that you can give them, Denise, from where they can start right now, today, to move them just a little bit forward?
yeah, I think, you know that, so when someone says it's too late, to me, that signifies fear, right? I mean, it's a statement of underlying it. Probably it could be fear. Maybe it's some other things, but and so like it's not too late. As long as we're not in a coffin, it's not too late.
Right?
Right. For anything, right.
For anything.
Yeah.
For, you know, for a relationship, for sex, whatever you want,
Yes.
for anything, right? As
Right.
long as we're not in a coffin, it's not too late.
Right.
And I think for us, you know, and I'm going to just push a little bit here, but for us to like tell ourselves it's too late, that to me is talk or language that isn't really loving. You know, it's not too late. Like starting on whatever we want to start on today will bear fruits for tomorrow.
Right.
And I think that we have to remember that.
Yeah.
Right. And I also think, you know, there's a spiritual aspect to money that we have to remember as well, which is that money is a blessing from God. Money is one of the forms of abundance that we are given on this earth, that we have the responsibility to be a steward of.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And just because, you know, we may not be a good steward of it in current day time, it doesn't mean that we can't learn how to be a steward and that we can't learn how to be in relationship with this medium of money.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you know, like one of the things I tell women a lot, it just helps, I think, to soften their hearts and also to soften their approach with money is this. If you can look at money as a relationship, and women are really, really good at relationships. I think we're masters, right? We keep all the relationships going in our lives, right?
Right.
Right.
So if we can look at what qualities do we bring to our best friendships, like what are those qualities for the two of you?
Well,
Honesty.
I think,
Honesty.
Honestly.
yeah, I was going to say trust. Yeah, we trust each other.
Right.
Mhm.
Caring. Genuine caring. Mm-hmm.
Time. You probably,
time.
you know, spend time. Respect.
Fun.
Fun. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And respect. Yes, that's a great one too. Yes.
Right. Understanding. So if we can just take all of the qualities, if women can, that they bring to their best female relationships, and they can apply that to their relationship with money.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a little abstract, but part of the work is, well, what are behaviors of respect that I can bring to my money life?
Mm-hmm.
What are behaviors of honesty that I can bring? What are
Right.
right? What are behaviors of time and truth and trust? How will I create that in this relationship?
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
Right?
Well, that is so awesome. All of that just,
Right. And I know you work a lot with women, but obviously, if they have a significant other in their life, there is, somehow you both need to get on the same page and you need to work through some of any disagreements that you have about money, especially because it seems like a lot of times, sometimes opposites attract. So, what you've experienced with your husband, I suspect, maybe, I mean, I know my husband and I are a little bit different, and I handle all the finances for all of for business and for home. And yet we've had to learn to have open conversations. So if you have a female who perhaps their spouse or significant other isn't necessarily on board with, let's address this, we can't just continue to ignore it, or we can't, whatever is going on in the situation. What do you have recommendations that typically help in terms of opening up that conversation, moving past that that the disagreement or the denial that people experience as a couple?
Sure. Because, to your point, when I see a couple for the first time and even the second time, it's kind of like when it comes to money, there's two different stories. Like one of them is saying there isn't enough and we're like, we're on the verge of bankruptcy. I'm just like making this up,
right. Right.
And the other one is like, oh my gosh, we have so much money. We don't even have to worry about anything. Like, what is wrong with your head?
Right.
Right? And so for me, other people may have a different approach, but for me, one of the things that I say to them is, look, because we don't know where the truth is. We don't know if it's in between, or like if one of you is really, we don't know what reality is, right? And this organ here in the brain, that brain that's in the head, it hardly is ever based in reality. It either amplifies or minimizes everything, depending on your dominant style.
True.
So another kind of shift that I do to get us out of this argument and to see what's really real and honest is I start couples on a spreadsheet. And the concept that I share with them is, look, because we don't know what reality is, we are going to move from this area of vagueness, because who knows what's going on, to this space of clarity.
Yes.
And numbers don't lie. We're not here to judge the numbers. We're only actually here to look at the flow, the inflow, the outflow, and are the dollars you're spending nourishing your deepest values? If they aren't, you get to decide that, not me, right? But once we start looking at inflow and outflow, there are lots of, wide eye, ahas, and then that is the spreadsheet is a tool. I look at it like as a money sandbox, where couples can come and play with numbers to look at possibilities, but where they can also come and look at inflow and outflow and strategize, because of course, for life to work, we do need more inflow than outflow. Right. And sometimes we don't know that we're stepping on the garden hose, making it blocked off, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So instead of like even for me, I don't put a lot of energy into what couples say. I respect that. I don't mean that as a disrespect, but what is really important is let's just see what's real. Let's get out of the interpretation.
And then go.
I
literally could talk on this forever, but I know we've already hit our 30-minute mark. But this is such interesting conversation. I almost want to have you back on first.
Yeah, we need to have part 2.
We need to have part 2.
Yeah,
so
because it's a big thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
And like you said, even for young couples just getting together, like, you know, my daughter is married to her husband's in med school, and the debt is just crazy what they come out with.
Yeah.
So you got a fresh married couple here, and then they're accruing hundreds of thousands in debt the day he walks across that stage. And, you know, so how do you continue to have this wonderful life together, and then you got this cloud hanging over you, right?
Yeah. And we had that when we got married, for sure.
Yeah.
2 months.
So yeah, we would love to have you back on, because you are a much needed coach, financial coach. So how can people find you, Denise?
Well, they can go to my website, and it's my name, denisehughes.org. And all of my contact information is there, my cell phone, my email, and I have a book that they can, you know, like people can reach me in different ways. I have a book called Earn, Save, Spend, Give, 4 Things to Do with Your Money and How to Make It All Work. And I also have a community of women. They're called WTFers. It's my a little irreverence in life, that rebel part of me, that it's not what you think it is. It's women talking finances.
I love it.
Right. And we talk money every day in fun ways. And then, you know, I have one-on-one coaching as well, but people can really find me on my website and see.
Right.
They can explore that. Yeah.
Right.
DeniseHughes.com. Is that what it is?
Org. DeniseHughes.org.
Thank
Right.
you.
Okay.
DeniseHughes.org. Well, fantastic. Thank you again for coming on. We'll have you on again for part 2, everybody.
Right. Because we barely peeled the onion on Denise Hughes, because she has lots of different talents within. And I feel honored and blessed to know her and call her a friend and colleague.
Exactly. So thanks everybody for tuning in for this part of finance and you know, how to help. So we look forward to seeing you next week on a new episode of Fulfilled After 50.
And if you haven't subscribed yet to this podcast, make sure you do it now. And if you haven't joined our private Facebook group, it is Fulfilled After 55 in Facebook. It's a free group for women 50 or older. And we actually talk wealth sometimes on Wealth Wednesday, if we're not doing Weight Loss Wednesday. But
That's right.
Something good's coming to you every single day in that private group. So make sure that you join us there. So Denise, thanks again.
Yes.
Appreciate you. Appreciate all you do for everyone.
All right.
Thank
Have
you
a good
so
day,
much.
everybody.
All right.
Thank
bye.
you all. Blessings.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.